This video presents steps for creating effective math services through the IEP. There are 4 elements of effective math services. First is identifying the post-secondary setting. Second is determining a math scope and sequence, including a timeline. Third is determining the setting for the math instruction. And fourth is writing IEP objectives that align with the scope and sequence and the timeline mentioned previously. Let's unpack the first element, which is identify post-secondary setting. The first one that I consider there to be is a career that would require a 4 or 2-year college degree. And in that setting, specific course requirements. There are specific course requirements, prerequisite courses, and possibly a math placement test. Second is a vocation that has specialized training and the math associated with that specialized training. What I have seen is most math associated with vocations is covered in K-8 education, for example, measurement, fractions, decimals, and students in this path may also need some consumer or life skills math. And then the third is a job that may have some sort of math needs. For example, one student's parent explained to me that her son likes sports and may want to work in a sporting goods store. And if you're talking about sports, talking up sports with customers, understanding some simple statistics like average number of yards per football game could be helpful. And also, there's likely a need for consumer or life skills math. The second element is the math scope and sequence. For a student who has a goal of career in college, they need to get at least Algebra 1 in high school. That algebra is typically the foundational course in college for prerequisites or for actual a requisite for a major. For a vocation, it's very dependent on the type of vocation. Again, we talked about fractions and measurements, etc. And what I typically do is find some literature or actually books written by someone in the vocation, or math books that explain the type of math for the different vocations. So that would be a good resource. And third, again, looking at the specific types of math associated with a job. A cashier obviously would have to know about money and be competent working with money. The next element is determining the setting for math instruction. One piece that I emphasize when working with families is that if a student has a goal of going to college, they need to have at least 1 year in a math course in high school with a setting that mirrors what they would see in college, and specifically a setting that would have 504 supports as opposed to special ed supports. They need to have that experience of what it's like to be in a college classroom before they get there. For a vocation, again, you can look for authentic settings like auto shop. You could try to mirror some of those, create those environments too. Working with a student who might go into landscaping, we did some work out in the school area, the grounds, and started looking at measurements and weights and like for rocks and moving rocks around. And then for a job, you try to mirror that the setting as best you can in a classroom setting. In the transition period after the classroom experience is over, there might be more opportunities for that. What we did at one school where I worked is we had students run a cash register for a little coffee stand that we ran or had for teachers to come get coffee. And the students practiced actually running the register and giving change and collecting money. And then the last element is writing IEP objectives. One of the things that I emphasize is that there should be a narrowing of the focus of the math. I find too often students who are the ones that struggle with math are giving extra math to do. And that's probably the opposite of what they need. So I like the focus to be narrowed and have the students work on basically one math objective, one topic at a time. And even if it's in a small group or pull out, they're still looking at supporting that one math topic as opposed to the support working on one math topic and then in the classroom there's a different math topic. That's a lot of extra math. So the gaps that may be present don't need to be covered separately in a different setting. The focus could be on addressing prerequisite skills that are related to the current math topic. So any support time could be used to fill in prerequisite gaps that align directly with the math topic at hand in the classroom. And then I also like there to be a sequential orientation of the objectives. So when we wrote some at a special ed school where I worked, we had one math objective for maybe about every 2 months. And it mirrored what the general ed classrooms would be doing. So, for example, if the unit is linear functions or linear equations, then there would be an IEP math objective addressing linear equations, and that would be the only objective being worked on at that point. So we covered in this video elements of effective math services, and I think there's 4 elements here. The identifying the post-secondary setting, determining the math scope and sequence, determining the setting for the math instruction, and then writing the IEP objectives that align with that scope and sequence. I hope this was useful for you and hope that you can help your students with this.